Welcome to the Weekly Roar, coming live from the Lion's Den, helping new managers become great leaders and awesome bosses. And now, here's your host, Greg Storch.
Hey there, everybody. Welcome to the Weekly Roar. So great to have you all back in the Lion's Den for this week's watch party. Today, I'm talking about another pivot as we continue my series called Inevitable Change, Making Pivots in Your Leadership. Before we get into today's pivot, I'm Greg Storch. I'm the founder of Lion Enterprise, a leadership development and coaching business where I focus on helping organizations create winning cultures. I'm a certified professional coach and a certified leadership speaker and trainer. Last week, I spoke about the pivot away from stagnation and over to creation. That pivot was about the importance of developing an abundance mindset that allows leaders to get into a more creative zone in their leadership. Now, if you weren't able to catch the Weekly Roar last Wednesday, then just head over to my website at www.lion-enterprise.com. Check out video number 77 for last week's session in the Lion's Pride Library, where you can also find all of my other videos. The Lion's Pride Library is free, and it's a great way for you to get more of the roar. Okay, let's talk about this week's pivot that leaders may want to make in order to reach their full leadership potential. Today, we're talking about making a pivot that allows leaders to stop, turn around, and reach their hand out to help others along in their own journey. At the end of the day, it's as simple as changing your focus away from yourself and turning it to others. So, what do you say we get this one started? One of the biggest breakthroughs I ever had as a leader was when I realized the satisfaction that I got from helping others get to where they wanted to go. At the end of the day, one of the biggest things that helps us to grow as leaders is creating other leaders and helping them to grow. Over the years, I've helped a lot of people get what they wanted in their professional careers. I was able to do that by focusing my attention on them and not on myself. Now, every now and again, I'll receive a message, an email, or even a post on Facebook from someone I used to lead, thanking me for my influence and helping them get to where they were in their careers. It feels great getting those notes. Sometimes we don't even know who we're positively impacting or influencing until we get that note telling us how we've changed someone's life. I think it was really the military that groomed me to always look out for others. Now, as I rose through the ranks and assumed responsibility for more and more people, I learned the importance of recognizing them and helping them succeed. I think that's why I really enjoyed my 3 years as a Navy instructor at the Dental Equipment Repair School in San Diego. It was a 6-month-long school that had only about 8 students per class. I was responsible for preparing those students to learn the skill of fixing dental equipment. My students would be taught plumbing techniques, electricity and electronics, how to work with tools, and even troubleshooting techniques. Man, that was over 26 years ago, and to this day, I still receive messages from prior students thanking me for helping them learn the trade of dental equipment repair. Now, as I think back on this pivot, I recall a specific time in my Navy career after I was commissioned as an officer. I was selected to be the detachment commander for a medical support team that was going to deploy with the Marines on training exercises. The sailors that were assigned to my detachment They worked so hard. And at the end of that deployment, I submitted a majority of them for personal awards on behalf of their efforts. One sailor in particular, I submitted for Sailor of the Year. Turns out he actually got selected for it. And that selection as Sailor of the Year for the base ultimately contributed to his advancement to the next pay grade. Gary was on his way to climbing his own ladder. All of these things were the building blocks that taught me a really valuable leadership lesson. And that was that leadership is not about the leader, it's about those they lead. There was a point in my life where I was focused on my own growth and promotion through the rank structure in the military. And I was never satisfied with the status quo. I was always looking at that next thing. When I graduated my basic dental assisting school, I spent 2 years on a ship before asking, what else is available to me? And that's how I ended up attending the advanced school for dental repair. Every time I promoted to my next rank, I was focused on preparing for the next promotion. I was always climbing that military rank ladder. That's how I ended up shifting from an enlisted sailor to a commissioned officer. But eventually, I did realize that there was more to leadership than focusing on getting myself to the top. That's when I started focusing on helping others get what they wanted. The view from the top may be worth the climb, but it's best when it's viewed with others. Now, I don't want to imply that there's something wrong with focusing on your own development and success. Not at all. It actually teaches us one of the most difficult skills a leader can have, leading ourselves. Now, I feel like we should go through that stage of our careers in order to understand what it takes so we can in turn help others. So certainly go through that phase and become a seasoned ladder climber, but don't stay there and become self-absorbed. I noticed that as I started to pivot to helping others, I started slowly by realizing that leaders should want more for their people, not from them. That's when I started to be more supportive of others and help them in any way I could. I'd encourage them and provide a sturdy foundation for them to develop the confidence and desire to start their own ascent to success. Now, there have been a few people in my life that made it clear they were determined and focused on their goals and dreams. And there have been others who I just felt compelled to want to help them. I wanted to invest my time in them and mentor them. But before I could get there, I had to have traveled the path first. This is a sign of a good mentor, someone who has successfully gone where you're trying to go. At some point in time, I had matured enough in my skills and had achieved enough success to really invest in some mentees who were on their way to great things. One of my most successful examples of this pivot is with a woman named Phyllis. Phyllis interviewed for an admin support position on the contract I was managing in Washington, D.C. I interviewed her at the Starbucks that afternoon, and I knew right away I wanted to hire her. So I did. Phyllis was joining the team to replace my previous admin assistant, who I had promoted into another position. Phyllis learned the new job quickly, and at one point, her and I ended up sharing an office. See, space is always an issue in the federal agencies in DC, and well, contractors don't usually have a high priority when it comes to giving out those spaces. Well, while we shared that office, I started teaching Phyllis about the finances on the contract. The finances on this particular contract were extremely complicated due to the funding streams in this agency, but she caught on really quick. Now, I explained the why behind every move I made. Now, I was mentoring Phyllis to assume control over the most important part of my job, managing the budget. See, I needed to delegate that responsibility to free up my time so I could place my focus on other matters within the contract. Now, I specifically remember this day. I was away from the office and a decision with the customer had to be made about a budget line item. And Phyllis, in my absence, made the decision. Now, when I returned back to the contract site, she told me what she had done and she told me how she went about making the decision. It was perfect. She did exactly what I would have done had I been at the office. Now, that's the day I handed full control of the finances to Phyllis. She got it. Phyllis was a superstar in every sense of the word. And when it was time for me to leave the contract, I continued to watch her grow by leaps and bounds. She was amazing. A few years later, long after I was gone and out on my own, and as her contract was ending, I brought her over to the company that I was working for as a consultant. The company CEO loved her. He was so impressed by her. So impressed that they started to give her small projects of her own. And before I knew it, Phyllis was a project manager herself. That admin assistant that I had hired several years prior had climbed her way up to project manager. Just last month, I found out that she's been given the responsibility over several of their contracts, and she was expertly running them as the program manager. I could not be more proud of Phyllis. Phyllis represented the culmination of all the stages that I went through as a leader to pivot to helping others climb to the top. See, after reaching a certain level of success myself, I started helping her begin her own journey to success. She showed me that she was an emerging leader, so I started to mentor her to the point where I eventually let her go on her own, and now she's just blowing it up. This is the point where, for leaders, they help new leaders stretch to their potential. This is the pivot that I'm talking about, moving from making your own way to helping others do it for themselves. When we develop the ability to focus on others to the point where they can reach a point of significance on their own, then we have made the pivot successfully. So, what I want you to do today is reflect on where you think you're at in your leadership journey. What stage are you in? Are you still focused on reaching your own success? If so, that's okay. We have to be proven performers ourselves before we can help others and mentor them. Are you at the stage where you're starting to focus a little more on others than yourself? Maybe encouraging people to take a risk and branch out in pursuit of their own dreams? If so, that's also a cool place to be. That's an indication that your journey is starting to make the pivot in the right direction to reaching your leadership potential. Or maybe you find yourself at the point where you've achieved a certain amount of success and have the ability and experience to mentor others in their journey. There are lots of leaders out there who are at this stage in their leadership, and it's a great stage to realize your own growth when you focus on the growth of others. You know what? Maybe you've already made this pivot and you've set others on their own way to success through your guidance and mentorship. You already helped people forge their own path. Regardless of what stage you find yourself in, I can honestly say that you will never regret investing in others and helping the stretch for their potential. Our growth as leaders depends on it. And like Zig Ziglar told us many years ago, you can have everything in life you want if you will just help other people get what they want. Okay, everybody, that is another pivot for you to consider from inevitable change, making pivots in your leadership. Man, I cannot believe that this month is already wrapping up. In just a couple of days, we're going to be having trick-or-treaters knocking at our door. Hey, thanks so much for tuning in again for the weekly roar. As always, I hope you know that I appreciate your support. Please do me a favor. Please, please, please share out this video to the weekly roar that I'm going to post in the Lion's Den Facebook page after this watch party. Sharing it out within your groups is helping me to influence other leaders and help them to grow. So thank you for doing that. I'm going to be back here next week in the Lion's Den, of course, and I'm going to be speaking about another pivot we can make in our leadership. Next week, I want to talk about one of my favorite pivots ever, and it's one that I actually recently made only within the last few years. The next pivot is about getting to really know those you're trying to lead. This one is all about connection versus direction. I hope you're going to join me next week. All right, everybody, until we meet again, remember, be powerful, but stay poised, just like a lion. Bye, everybody.
Thanks for watching the Weekly Roar live event at lionenterprise.com. If you enjoyed this video, please tell others to join us each week here in the Lion's Den. Thanks again, and see you next week.